When you do deep learning, deep practicing of anything, whether it's a sport or a piano or a particular instrument or learning a language, it promotes the regrowth of your myelin, which helped me with my cognitive issues that was initially caused by Lyme disease. I could literally feel my brain changed and improved and getting close to back to where it used to be because I used to have photographic memory.
Shirley, thank you so much for joining us. I know you are an opera singer, and I'm going to ask you a bit about that later on. But first, I'd like to just find out a bit more. You have Lyme disease. If you could just share a little bit with us about what it is and how it's been affecting you. And yeah, let's start there.
So Lyme disease is a bacterial infection that affects your central nervous system and your autoimmune system. And it affects your whole body. You can be in pain from head to toe. It could be extremely fatigue, severe brain fog. Somebody made a comment to say, hey, the symptoms sound so much like COVID. Well, it's a lot like it in a lot of ways. And I very rarely talk about it because I'm of the thought, this is my philosophy, whatever you're suffering ailment-wise shouldn't be your identity. And when I'm not suffering or hurting from it, I don't want it to be something that consumes my life. So, and I think that's actually helped a lot with my healing. And you get infected by having a tick bite, which is an insect. And it's very mysterious in some ways because some people have tick bites their whole life. They never get sick. And some people, their genetic predisposition kind of makes it easier for them to contract. It's kind of like people, when we were dealing with COVID, it's a similar thing. Some people are exposed, they never get sick. Other people, they're mildly exposed and they're very sick. And so that's kind of the situation. And I was a very active outdoor person. And one day I came home with an insect bite. I didn't think very much about it. A few weeks later, I was so fatigued, I could barely keep my eyes open. If I drive down the street to do grocery shopping 10 minutes away, when I come back, I would be so fatigued, I have to lay down and sleep for 5 hours before I could recover. I knew something was wrong. And that's how I kind of started the journey to discover what caused it. And I discovered it was Lyme disease. And I knew exactly when I got it. So,
yeah. So how is it affecting you at the moment? Is it something that you can get rid of? Is it something that stays in your system and maybe flares up like chickenpox?
Technically, you cannot fully recover from Lyme. And but I'm impacted by it as an overall thing because I used to be a very strong person who was fit. And now I've gained a lot of weight and I'm not as strong because if my muscles are sore. I remember there was once I went to a dance class and afterwards I was sore and I got a fever and I was down and bedridden for 2.5 weeks afterwards. So the kind of exercises I do, how much, I was not even clear to do yoga because this affected my spine. And but on the other hand, I'm doing so much better. And a big part of it is because I read a book that talked about when you do deep learning, deep practicing of anything, whether it's a sport or a piano or a particular instrument or learning a language, it promotes the regrowth of your myelin, which helped me with my cognitive issues that was initially caused by Lyme disease. I could literally feel my brain changed and improved and getting close to back to where it used to be because I used to have photographic memory. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't find words. I couldn't figure out what I needed to say. And which is a problem when you have to sing in multiple languages.
It sounds like a lot similar to MS symptoms where you have the brain fog and the pain. So how would people know the difference?
Well, it's bacterial, so you can run tests. And
Okay.
also, because it's an insect bite, when you become infected by Lyme disease and not just being bitten, but actually infected, you get a target-shaped rash. So you have the red dot, and then around it would be like lighter color, and then another round of red, another round of lighter color, and then so forth, so on, like a target. And that's what I had. That's why I knew exactly when I got it.
Yeah. So you say different people have got different symptoms. How would it
Mhm.
present in various people? I mean, I know I had tick bite fever when I was pregnant, and I was very
Mm,
deathly sick. And they couldn't
yeah.
give me the normal antibiotics because I was pregnant. And so they said, yeah, if I took them at a certain stage of pregnancy, then the baby's teeth would turn black and fall out. So I couldn't give them the
Oh
traditional.
no.
It
Oh
was
my
quite scary.
goodness.
So
Oh my
yeah, but
God.
I'm wondering because I didn't have any symptoms like you're describing, but I'm having them now. Is it something that you think could happen later on over the years?
Yes, because for me, it happened really quickly. That's probably because my body was predisposed to reacting to such things. And, but there are other people, it took them decades to discover, and they couldn't remember when they got it. And so, I learned a lot about it. And I actually didn't want to do the antibiotics because I did 2 rounds of the traditional antibiotic rounds. The first time, it was like a miracle. I all of a sudden start feeling better. And then a few weeks later, and it turns out there is a cycle because the Lyme disease is from the bacteria, and those bacteria have babies. And there's a
Yeah.
cycle of about 28 days, just like what we have. And so, so then when I had a second treatment, it didn't really do much because my body grew resistance. And
Yeah.
at that point, I made a decision of not continuing with traditional. And I started doing my own research and I did a lot of herbal treatment. And it helped. But it was interesting because uh, I did so much research and reading about alternative treatments, and I did it. And it was up to 5 doses of herbal solutions. And I was sweating and burning up hot the entire time to a point where my sheets, I think there was so much acid and toxin inside my body that I was herxing. And that my
Mm.
sheets started to have holes that was warmed by my sweat.
Wow.
And I was kind of in shock because those sheets I've had them for a long time and they weren't old, but they were, let's say, 2 years. So that's not old. And they were high thread counts. And I wash them every week. So it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, they are thin, they wear out. But when I was on those herbal routines, my sweat literally ate through the fabric and the sheets eventually turned to be shreds. I had to buy new sheets several times, but I started feeling better. The only problem was I was on so many different things, concoctions based on my research. I didn't know what was holding this thing together, what wasn't. I was afraid to stop taking anything. And by that time was like a list of 30, 40 things. And I figured I was going to probably die from overdosing if I wasn't careful. So I did find a very special integrative doctor who specialized in Lyme disease, but he retired in January 2022. So that was very interesting because he had a lot of continuing, he had me stop all of my routine and I was okay. And he was even suspicious of maybe I didn't have Lyme because I was doing so well. Because I believed it was more important to focus on doing well and not my illness. And
Yeah.
so that's why I didn't really talk very much about it. And most people who knew me and know me now, they don't know I have it. They don't know I don't feel well in between events and I need to lay down and rest a lot. And because whatever I'm dealing with shouldn't be what runs my life, but it does affect my life. And the two, in my perception, are different.
No, you're right. And the thing is, if people focus on the illness, you're just going to make it more.
Mhm.
Whatever you focus on
I think
grows.
so. Right. I personally of that thought. And I wasn't really focused on, oh my God, I'm feeling so awful because honestly, it was all consuming. I didn't have to focus on it. It was there all the time. So I started to focus on the moments when it was good. And I learned to slow down. I started listening to a lot of audiobooks by Thich Nhat Hanh. I read a lot of his, things like walking meditation. And I would had to, at the time, the only thing that could stop my body pain was walking. And, but it was painful to walk. So I would just put on my audiobook and walk around the block. I used to be able to hike 12 miles a day. A quarter of a mile was almost too much for me by that time. And
Yeah.
but if I didn't force myself to move my body, I would be in pain for the next few days. But at the same time, I learned to slow down because I was always do. And that it was not a possibility during the time when it was really hard. Even now, I have to really watch how I pace myself. But I've learned a lot of times things work out because they are meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's not really because of our effort only. And slowing down the pace allows me to focus on only things that's important. I find myself to be a lot more efficient, focused, and effective. And also, I feel like I'm following my purpose a lot more because whatever comes to be are things that really, one, they're meant to be. Two, they're important to me.
Yeah. So if I may ask, what did your health regime look like? Your holistic, probably a range of things, right?
I think it's mostly in my mind. That sounds terrible because what's the health regime? Well, just think about it. No.
No, no, like when you were taking all those concoctions and your sheets were getting holes in them, was it like a list of things like turmeric and ginger and those kinds of things?
At the time, it was a concoction that's designed for Lyme disease. And then I would do certain things. And at the time, and now I'm so happy to be eating. I could eat anything and it doesn't get me sick. At the time, so many things got me sick. I don't mean throwing up sick. I mean, my entire body in pain for 2, 3 weeks if I took a bite of chicken.
Wow.
And so I was on an alkaline-based diet very specifically, and I was so surprised by how much discipline I had during that time. But I think it's because of my classical music background. So I knew if I had to deliver something, I had to be disciplined, but there's an end to it. That's what I was hoping, at least.
Yeah.
And so that was at the time, it was alkaline based, clean water, clean food, and no starch. Anything that would be turned to acid and sugar and stuff like that would feed the bacteria and also increase the inflammation. So it's an anti-inflammatory alkaline-based diet and a lot of water, but the water has to be clean. And because I couldn't really exercise, so I forced myself the last thing you want to do when you're not well and tired and fatigued and having brain fog is to socialize. But it's not good to be isolated. So every Friday night during that period, I forced myself to go out to take salsa dance classes. And I would stay for the social, but I couldn't dance for very long. However, it was really helpful because it pushed me to be with people. My mind was not focused on what's going on with my body. I didn't tune it out per se, but I did have other things to focus on at the moment. It also allowed me to move my body in a way that was fun. And I think all of those at the end added to be something more important because I couldn't do yoga at the time. The stretch, if I just pushed a little bit more, it would trigger inflammation, which was devastating for me because I had been practicing yoga for 20 years by that time. It was such a big part of my life. But,
Yeah.
things change, learning to accepting it. and continue until now, I think it's actually the biggest part of my health routine.
Yeah. So you're able to do yoga now?
Minimally. I don't go to classes because I can't really control the process. And if I don't know the instructor, some of them are more regimented than others. And I don't particularly feel I want to go walk into a studio and share my life
Yeah.
story with strangers. But fortunately, I practiced Ashtanga yoga and other forms of more restorative yoga for so long that I was comfortable doing practices on my own. And it's a very slow-paced practice, but and I see what I can do, and I don't practice all the time. I just go with it, see what I can do, and I often sit with my intuition. It tells me what is good for me for that day.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same. If I exercise too much, I feel so sore and stiff for a few days at a time.
Mhm.
And yeah, I never linked that to Lyme disease. I thought maybe it's something else that I had.
Oh,
Like I had mold in my lungs about 6 years ago, and I
oh
never
my
recovered
goodness.
from that. It's a bit hectic.
I
Eh?
am so sorry. Oh, but I think everything happens in life that helps us to understand something else. And
Well,
that is
the,
unpleasant. I'm very sorry.
you know what the thing is? It leads you to trying to find a higher purpose and finding out what is
Yes.
the underlying cause, because I believe that there's an emotional cause
Mhm,
behind things.
mhm.
The physical cause is the tick bite fever or the mold
Right,
or whatever,
exactly. Right,
but you wouldn't have gotten sick if you didn't have the emotional um,
right.
pain,
Pain.
trauma that is behind
Yes.
it. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, and that's
It's
led me on a
interesting.
path. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it has been a big journey, like figuring out maybe I have trauma that I've not dealt with, I've not even acknowledged. And then it turned out there was some major
Yeah,
traumatic events that I just chose to believe it was normal.
yeah, that's it.
And so, so a lot of things have happened. I even sing better now than I ever have. But Lyme disease, it did force me to stop performing for almost 5 years because I
Oh,
remember in 2018, in the middle of my very last concert, I was so tired and I was in so much pain from head to toe. During the intermission, I was in tears because it was a solo concert. I didn't know if I could finish my concert, and that was frightening. And so I canceled everything afterwards. And I was scared. And it wasn't until summer of last year, 2023, I started doing smaller, not full scale concerts. But then I did my full concert for the first time last July. I was scared too because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was tired, but I was not in pain. So that was an improvement. And then as I continued to work on very gentle restoration and working through, you know, my pain. And I'm not referring to purely just the physical pain, but I think the
mm,
personal pain. I feel free. And and this and now I can sing at any length and I'm fine. And I also don't have the same pain. I also don't have the pain that I had even before Lyme disease, emotional pain and worrying about certain things, which affected my voice's function. So I actually, in a very odd way, I don't recommend it, but I am grateful for my experience.
yeah. Well, it teaches you to become aware of your body and work with
Yes.
it, not despite it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah. And I think when you get older, you get wiser for that reason.
Well, hope so, right? We hope so.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your singing. You do opera, right?
I do actually a lot of concert. Yeah, go ahead,
Okay, yeah.
please.
Not saying, have you always been singing since you were young?
Yes. And I've also been a pianist and there's a few other things along the way. And yes. And I'm a trained operatic soprano. And I also love doing concerts. I do a lot of concerts with interesting repertoire and with different ensemble because there's so much creativity and also control, artistic control over the environment. Last year, I did over 20 solo concerts. And this year, it's getting up there too. And it's to me, it's very exciting. And also, a friend of mine are also working on creating a vocal slash breathing workshop for healing, connecting because our voice is so honest because it's so connected to our breath. And our breath is so honest. Whatever we don't even want to acknowledge, our breath does. And it shows up in our voice. So we're working on creating a workshop to help people to heal by connecting with their breath and connecting with their voice. And it's not necessarily just for singers. It's really for anybody. And we want to create a program for seniors. We want to create a program for actors, for people who are in, maybe people are really happy and they want to hold on to that happiness. Maybe they're in pain. Maybe they're somewhere in between and they just want to explore.
Well, I've interviewed a few people already who work specifically with sound healing. So one uses singing bowls, the other one uses instruments and whistling, and you use the voice. And I think there's something going on with that because sound also has a frequency, just as emotions do. And I can't see why it wouldn't work. I mean, I'm sure that's how they cut the pyramids, is using sound.
And I think there is something very special when the sound is coming from inside of you.
Yeah.
And connecting and hearing what is coming out of the deep part of your soul.
Yeah. I could never sing, but I used to dance. Okay. So I used to say, you're not allowed to sing when you're dancing. You're representing the music. You're not the singer. But it's a similar kind of thing, but it's not the same because I always used to wish I could sing. Do you think anyone could sing, or do you think some people just shouldn't?
I think everyone can sing, and it would take a little bit more effort for some than others. I work with students who were desperate to sing, and they were tone deaf. And guess what? Some of them debuted it with their own EP later on, and they sang beautifully, but it was a lot of work. And I think if singing is recreational, you shouldn't judge yourself. And you should just learn how to let it out. And the funny thing is, if you start letting your voice out, then the physicalization, most of the reason why people sometimes feel that they can't sing is because they're not connecting with what they hear, with what they feel physically. So once you let go of judgment and you just start making sounds and noises, your body becomes familiar with it. It's like dancing. I remember feeling like I had two left feet. But then once I started going to classes for 2 years, I began to feel my right foot. And but I was never going to be a great dancer, and but I was able to enjoy it. And I think it's a lot of it is to connect with physically what does it feel like. And the workshop is not going to be a whole lot about singing, but connecting your breath to the sound. And so there is a release. So literally, you're not holding your breath.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you start very young? Because opera, to me, I know you say you do a lot of singing styles, but opera is quite an interesting choice. What is it that made you?
Yeah, I moved to the United States when I was 15. I wanted to be a writer. And I've been playing the piano since I was 4. And I also was a visual artist. And I came to this country only knowing 100 English words. And those 100 English words included I, M, U, R, N, A, apple. so it's not very many in reality. And so I felt like I was never going to be able to be a writer, because to be a writer, first of all, you have to read a lot. And also you need to have more than 100 words in your vocabulary. And I was already 15, and in the culture where I came from, you have to kind of be prepared to embark onto the career of your choice by that age. But then I discovered, or rather people discovered, I had a voice that was unusual. And and started giving me free instructions on singing opera. And all of a sudden, because it was in different languages, and I was at the same starting point as everybody else, and I fell in love with German poetry, of all
Okay.
things. And I related to it the most. And I love the combination of sound, literature, and imagery. So then I realized how much I could possibly love this thing. And as I continued to study and dug into it, I just fell in love. Couldn't walk away.
I think you're very fortunate to find the thing that you're meant to do at a young age.
Mhm.
Some people are
I
still
think so
looking.
too. I think about that every time when I sing, and I don't know what it's like to not know what you're supposed to do. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. Because during the 5 years when I wasn't able to perform a whole lot, it was difficult. But I played the piano a lot. And during the pandemic, I would practice 5 to 7 hours a day on the piano.
Wow.
And it helped my brain to recover. That's when I read a book called The Talent Code, which explained what I was experiencing, that deep learning stimulated the myelin in my brain to start to grow again and creating new connectors, neural connectors. And and I noticed there was a really big difference in my cognitive abilities. So, and my central nervous system seemed to be healing. I was miraculously no longer in pain physically. So that was very interesting because there was no way I could sit there and practice for that long in 2018.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
Mm.
I was reading a book called Super Learning, and they
Mm.
teach people how to learn a language in 2 weeks, a whole
Mhm.
language, and they would learn 1,000 words a day. And the reason they would learn it, and it's people from all walks of life, different countries,
Mhm.
they would play classical music and they would recite the words as the music went up, the voice went up, and the music would go
Mm.
down, the voice would go down, and the brain synchronizes. And
Oh, wow.
in one day, they would learn 1,000 words just from that. So
Super learning.
I can believe it. Yeah, it's called super learning.
I need to
And
read that.
yeah, it's quite an old book. I actually found it. I picked it up somewhere, and I thought this looks interesting. But yeah, I think that's probably what the classical music did, because you're synchronizing your brain
Mhm.
hemispheres
Exactly.
with memorizing the notes and the music together.
And also the biofeedback. And
Yeah,
when the hands cross past the midline of the body and all of the stuff.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Well, 7 hours a day is quite a long time.
Yeah, but I also didn't have much else to do.
Well, one would argue there were other things to do, but that to me is a passion. That's not a
I couldn't eat a lot of food. So when people were baking and cooking, I was like, oh, well, not for me. And I lived alone and I taught
yeah,
online and it was just, I started a podcast and started practicing piano. That's what I did.
yeah, that's awesome. No, well done. So tell me a bit more about your workshops. So are you going to be hosting them online or is it live?
No, for now, we want to do it live because I think it will be helpful as we develop it because
Mm.
it's in developmental stage with another singer I just did a concert with. I think it's helpful um, to actually be able to kind of experience what the participants are experiencing. I think being in the same room in the developmental stage will help us to know what we need to put into it. So it's more universal. So it could be helpful to more people.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So where would people find out more about that?
That we will start. I do have a newsletter, and so what I can do is I can send you the link to sign up for the newsletter. And
Yeah,
we're going to start to send out newsletters about my singing, my performances, different things I do. And it will not be overwhelming because, for one, I don't really have a lot of time to write the newsletter, so it probably will be once a quarter. And but so you won't get a lot in your inbox, but you will get something that will just simply outline some of the things we're doing, the concerts I'm creating, the projects I'm working on, and also as we develop this workshop. And we haven't really thought about making it online, but I'm thinking maybe it's worth it. And let us do one or two in person. Then we will start to maybe create some videos from it so people can understand what it is that we do with a short video, like maybe 1 minute or something. And then we can maybe start thinking about doing online, because I think it's important to figure out. I've done a lot of online teaching, so I know everything can work online, and it's very important to have good communication, and also helping the participants to know ahead of time of what they need to create in their environment. But I think we need to figure out what that is first from the in-person session.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds awesome. So if they wanted to see you sing or hear you sing, do you have any albums? Do you have any like sessions that have been recorded that people could listen to?
Not a whole lot. I should, and I'm working very hard on it. And I'm recording more and more things. And another thing during the pandemic is I reconnected with my root, because operatic singing is very Western. It's very European. And some is very American now, with the new operas written in English. But I wanted to connect with more of my culture, the Chinese culture. So I'm doing a lot more performances now with traditional Chinese instruments, but utilizing the Western bel canto singing technique, which is the only technique I know. I don't know how to do the Chinese traditional singing. And what I found is the general audience have really embraced it. It's something they're comfortable with something that's new and different. And the instruments and then the vocal style is more Western. And so that's something I'm doing a lot with as well. And so hopefully we will create an album in the near future and maybe start releasing some singles with some of those pieces.
Yeah, that would be lovely. So thank you for sharing all your story. I know you say you don't want people to know that you have this, but I mean, people are people. We are human beings.
Exactly. Right.
And at the end of the day, if they're going to judge, they're not your people. That's my opinion. So, do you have a message for our viewers before we go?
Run towards the light. Don't run away from darkness. So it's to don't run away, but run towards, and make your choices on what you're running towards.
Love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Shirley, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing you sing, and may you sing many more years.
Where are you located at?
I'm in South Africa.
Whoa, wow.
So it's nighttime here, but yeah, we all come from different parts of the world. So that's why I love online, because we get to meet so many different people and there's no more barrier.
Yes.
But you know what? I do this because I love it. I just love connecting with people. And like I said earlier, you're my people, because to me, it's people that are thinking bigger. It's where are you going rather than where are you coming from? You know, it's not about being stuck in
where you're running towards, right?
Yes, correct. Yes. It's yes, I had this trauma, but what is it that I want to do with it? What did I get? What did I gain? Not what did I lose?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And don't run away from the trauma. Sit with it.
Yeah.
Become friends with it. And then kiss it and say, but I'm going somewhere else. You be here and be a good girl. You know?
That's it.
Yeah, we have to love that part of ourselves, because it's not disappearing.
Yeah.
It's here.
Well,
and
that's it. And people, you know what I find? People that are miserable are thinking, if I have this, or if I'm better, or if I have a better relationship, then I'll be happy. And happiness is a choice. You know,
Oh
I've met
God,
people that
yes.
are in such a bad space in their lives and they're happy, and you'd think they shouldn't be happy. If you look at what they're going
Mm-hmm.
through, they
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be happy, and they are. Because at the end of the day, you choose your suffering.
You do. You choose your happiness. You also choose your suffering. And I stopped my podcast, but I really want to get back to it. It's because my life changed. I thought, life is short. Let me come here. And so I sold my house, packed up my life, and came to LA. And you know what? It's been a great thing. And my singing started taking off again because of the environment is conducive, and my body's in a better place. My mind is in a better place. Everybody's healthier and happier. And but a lot of people would have thought, what? You're leaving your entire house where you're just by yourself and you're living with your parents now. I'm so happy. I'm so
Yeah,
grateful I have this time with them. I miss so much with my family over the years because I was far away. So,
yeah,
you know, choices,
you're right.
choices.
People stay
Hmm.
stuck in their comfort zone for so long. And
Yes.
I always say, just do something. Just do something, even if it just means move. Find something else,
Hmm.
start something new, because you don't know where it's going to lead.
Right.
And you can always go
You
back,
don't.
but
Yes.
you
And
can always
right.
also live in regret. And I don't want to live in regret.
But I think we all have been there at some point, and that's why we know we don't want to be there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. It was lovely to meet you, and have a
Likewise.
blessed day. And
You
I'll chat
too.
with you soon. I look forward to it.
Thank you.